Good afternoon. I think we can get started. I've heard that I will be thrown off the stage in 25 minutes, so I probably need to be a little faster than I would actually enjoy to be, but I will be talking a little about a couple of incidents that I have been investigating in the past and how those could have potentially been stopped. I will be telling a little bit about my background soon, so the preventing methods, the defending part is not really my forte, so you probably might know things better than I do, so please bear with me when we get to that stage. But a couple of words of me. So my name is Jouni Mikkola. I'm currently working as a DFIR and SOC development manager at Nixu. I'm leading our SOC, SOAR teams, CM teams, and also the DFIR function. Been doing a lot of threat hunting in my past 5 years at Nixu, and my first role when I joined the company was in incident response, so I was a technical incident responder. 4 years in my career within Nixu, I was actually getting a position to lead the DFIR team, and a couple of months ago I got my current position. Actually, one thing that I want to know, this is my first time at Disobey. It's nice to get to present at the first time that I attend, actually, so that's good. Been 15 years in IT, and Nixu is my first cybersecurity role. Before that, I was a sysadmin or consultant doing things like Office 365, Active Directory, Lync, OCS, if you know what those are, and so forth. So today, I will be speaking of real-life incidents, real-life breaches. All the things that I speak of are something that has happened in the reality. It will be fairly high level. I will not be giving out details. Of course, the companies which are affected by the crimes here do probably not want that they will be revealed in it, which is why I'm leaving a lot of details out of it. Also, I don't want to be overly technical, so if not all personnel here are super into techniques, you probably can understand what I'm saying. I will only go through part of the techniques that we have observed in those. These were handpicked by me. I thought they were at least partly interesting, which is why I have chosen the ones that I'm actually speaking of today. There would have been many other little details that I could have spoke of, but yeah, maybe next time. Also, as stated, the last part of this presentation will be about how these 3 incidents could have been stopped. Not really going to speak how you are actually in general stopping breaches, but how these 3 that I'm going through would have been stopped, most likely. And also good to note, I'm following MITRE ATT&CK matrix, and we can start with it. So what this is, it's basically something that has been developed since Lockheed and Martin released their cyber kill chain. This is sort of a more broad version of it. It has a lot of details in it. So basically, in the enterprise matrix, there is another one for OT, for example, but I'm talking of the enterprise or IT stuff here. It has 14 different tactics, and they are trying to be in chronological order. So there's 14 different, starting with recon, going to resource development, initial access, and so forth. I'm not going to go through all of these tactics one by one, but when I get to an interesting point, I might say a word or two about some of them. But what you need to remember, there's 14 of these, and this is very good thing to have, very good thing to follow when you are building your capabilities in detection side, for example. A single tactic here, let's take, for example, execution as a tactic. That could have hundreds of techniques in it, techniques and sub-techniques. And those are very hands-on stuff, very hands-on. So it could be something like CLI, something is executing something with PowerShell. So you can use those and map your visibility, for example, in SOC if you would like to do so. In incident response, it's not chronological. So this is how it looks in the reality when you're actually looking at how the attackers are dealing within the environment. So they are jumping all over the place. Someone might be actually jumping from lateral movement to the actual impact phase. Impact phase being the last one, which is when data gets encrypted and all that fun stuff. So it's not really chronological. Things tend to jump from one tactic to another, and it's normal for the attacks. If you are in incident response, you most likely know this. But from this, we can actually jump to the interesting part. So first case that I'm speaking of today, called close call. Maybe someone can even guess what will happen in this incident. Maybe not. But this one started with a resource development tactic. And resource development is a tactic where the attacker is actually building something to gain access to your environment. So they could, for example, build their own malware at this stage. They could code something, but they could also, for example, fish for accounts. And in this particular case, the attacker got access to a credential, user credentials. We don't know how. That wasn't really revealed in the investigation. I mean, if you are in incident response, you probably know this. When users' credentials are compromised, and you can say that they are compromised, then you go and ask the user, did you click a link maybe? They always say, no, I didn't do anything bad. And they are, of course, lying. So yeah, it's potentially a victim of a phishing attack, but we don't know. After this, the threat actor was able to find publicly available remote access server. It wasn't VPN in this case, but sort of a similar thing. So basically, the attacker got access to publicly available server from which they could actually move further within the network. It's fairly easy for the attacker to find these services. So basically, they can run public scans, they can target your own public subnets, and they can find this stuff out if they want to. And if they have working credentials, they're good to go. After that, the threat actor was launching, I'm writing here malware known as Cobalt Strike, but yeah, it's not really malware. Cobalt Strike is a tool for penetration testers and red teamers. So basically, it's sort of a C2 framework, if you will. Works by client or beacon server methodology. So basically, the attacker or the red teamer here installs the Cobalt Strike server somewhere in the internet. Then they try to get their clients or beacons inside your network. And when they do that, the clients or beacons will be calling home to the server. Then the attacker can actually launch whatever commands they like from the server targeting those endpoints. But yeah, it's not really a malware, it's a legitimate tool, and actually the vendor does not sell the tool to anyone. So basically they have a quite some extensive vetting program. If I, as a person, would go to them and, hey, I'd like to buy Cobalt Strike from you, they probably would tell you, go away, we don't really want to sell it to you. But because it's a very good tool, the threat actors still like to use it. They want to use it. And they can, because they can get the trial version of it or cracked version. Nothing can be done by that. Fortunately, in this case, it didn't really work. The malware protection stopped it. Antivirus stopped it, partly. We also had devices where there was no signs that antivirus would have been blocking it, but still it failed for some reason. No idea why, but hey, it is what it is. The threat actor was silent for a couple of days. After that, they moved on to PowerShell-based threat, remote access Trojan. The remote access Trojan itself was trying to bypass AMSI, quite, again, easy for anyone who understands the techniques. It's not very hard to do that, and they were trying to bypass it because, well, if you don't know what AMSI does, it's trying to pinpoint malicious PowerShell usage. So yeah, PowerShell is used very lot in different kind of attacks. It's very, very common tool for the attackers to be using. So AMSI was built by Microsoft to stop that or prevent that. In this case, it was loaded with svr32.exe, the DLL, which was trying to do the bypass. While at it, the threat actor was able to gain access to several different user accounts. They had many accounts, multiple accounts, after which they used the PowerShell rat, which I described earlier, and they were laterally moved within the network using the PowerShell rat and the accounts that they had acquired. Interesting thing about this case is that they tried to target every single device within the domain, Active Directory domain. So they pulled a list of computer accounts from the domain and targeted the attack against all of them. Fortunately, the threat actor stole accounts which had pretty much quite low amount of privileges. They only had local admin privileges on some servers, so they didn't really have domain admin level privileges. If they would have that, they probably would have infected thousands of devices. But in this attack, because they only had local admin privileges on certain set of devices, they were only able to infect tens of devices. One unfortunate note in this attack was, and why this succeeded, is that the originally compromised account had local admin permissions on the remote access server. So they could potentially, for example, dump the credentials from their remote access servers is being used by a lot of different accounts. So it's quite likely that other accounts were acquired from there. But the fortunate thing in this was that it was stopped before anything really malicious happened. So tens of devices were actually affected, but nothing else. Let's move on to the Crossfire. Ooh. In this case, the threat actor got access to an Excel file. The Excel file itself looked something like on the slide. So basically, there were a list of user accounts, and there were also a list of passwords for those user accounts. Yeah, also, the particular list had list of VPN addresses, publicly available VPN addresses. So the threat actor actually didn't even run a scan here. They didn't need to. They had the information in a single Excel file, all the information to compromise this environment. IP addresses for internal servers, names for internal servers, roles for internal servers, and of course, quite high-level, highly privileged account information too. Maybe someone from the insider threat, maybe gave access to the attacker to the list. I don't want to give too much of details how that potentially got acquired, but there is a huge possibility that this was insider threat. And if it was, this was the only time. I've investigated hundreds of cases, and this has been potentially the only time in Finland when there has been, or in my investigations, and of course because I'm working at Nixu, I'm mostly dealing with Finnish companies, it's possible that this was the only case where there was actually an insider threat. But of course that can't be proven. Nevertheless, after they got access to the environment internally, they were running discovery scans. Discovery is a tactic where the attacker is trying to gain more information of the target network after initial access, after they got access in. They were launching some network scans, and they were trying to find out if the list that they had contained actually all the devices in the network or not. After which, of course, they laterally moved within the network. They were mostly using RDP, mostly moving manually within the network, and sometimes they were actually pushing something through SMB too, but it was mostly RDP. After which the attacker gains access, they were able to find business data. I mean, it was only tens of gigabytes of business data, so I guess that's good or bad. Depends on your business. All the data was exfiltrated that the attacker deemed interesting, of course, which is normal. And one interesting case about this, or detail of this case, is that the attacker was using completely legitimate cloud service, something that mostly, at least some of you are using, but I'll leave that unnamed. Then, boo, the environment was encrypted. Then the good news, partly. So, last interesting fact of this case. The threat actor was in a network which was sort of, I don't want to say segmented, but there were multiple subnets. They didn't really have firewalls or anything in between of them. But the threat actor didn't really realize that they had huge access to multiple tens of sites, no firewalls in between. Would they have been a little bit better on what they are doing, they would have noticed that they have actually domain admin level account stored in one of the servers. This was a single Active Directory domain, by the way. Should they have been stolen password of that particular attack and noticed that actually we have global access to anywhere, they would have been actually encrypting all the devices of that company. But this was fairly small branch office, so fortunately the attacker wasn't too good. Not really going to recap everything that I just said, so let's move on to the last one. Anyone guess what happens? Yeah. So initial access vector here was VPN service, once more. Nothing special of it, but then one tidbit of information. Unfortunately, the stolen account, the stolen credentials, had domain admin privileges from the get-go. And that's my real face when I found that out. I mean, come on. Who gives domain admin level access to anyone who can log in remotely? Well, yeah, quite many, I guess, but hopefully you don't. Anyways, again, the attacker was using mostly SFTP and RDP to move, or at least to move some data within the network. I'll tell you a little bit more of the SFTP usage later on. This was mostly done manually. So everything here, RDP, all SFTP and all that fun stuff, manual work. No automation or anything. After the fact, they were able to find hundreds of gigabytes of data. And this is an interesting case, as in lately the threat actors, especially the ransomware actors, are quite quick in their operations. So they come in, they encrypt your environment in 2 hours after. This threat actor was in this environment for weeks before they actually encrypted it. So they had quite some time to actually find the interesting data. They had quite some time to exfiltrate it out. And of course, they were very successful in stealing pretty much anything here. And after this, you probably guess what happens. Boom. Everything is encrypted. I say everything and I mean it. Backups. So let's get back to the SFTP thing then. So why SFTP? This company used a lot of ESXi. If you don't know what ESXi is, it's hypervisor. So it's a server which is hosting other servers virtually. Other products exist like Hyper-V, but in this case, the company was using ESXi servers to host tens of different servers, and they had around 10 ESXi hosts, if I remember correctly. There was a little bit of an unfortunate thing. I mean, you remember that the threat actor had domain admin level privileges from the get-go. The same password of the account was used for the local account on the ESXi hosts. So they were pretty much using the same account to jump to the ESXi hosts, encrypt those. All the backup servers were hosted on those ESXi servers. So pretty much everything was lost. No offsite backups. Nothing. Yeah, the customer was a little bit panicky at this stage. I can tell you that. I'm not going to go to the recovery phase very much, but I know that the company here was at least trying to negotiate with the ransomware actor, but I myself don't really recommend that, and I don't want to be included in all that. So yeah, don't know what happened in the end. So how could this have been prevented? I have almighty 6 or so minutes to tell you about this, so hey, let's be fast. So what was common in all of these attacks? Firstly, identity. By the way, I need to check the slides every time that I'm changing them because my Mac is awesome. I really recommend Macs. Identity, yeah. The threat actor was using real working credentials on all of these 3 cases. They were able to steal credentials somehow in all of these. Also, interesting fact, of course, is that on 2 of the occasions of these 3, it had way too much permissions, or actually no, I'm lying. It was all 3 cases. They had way more access that they should have. Account which is logging in remotely to a remote access server, VPN or whatever, shouldn't really have domain admin level privileges, or even local admin privileges on the server which they are logging into. It's quite bad. I mean, yeah. The second thing, lateral movement. On all of these cases, the attacker was successfully moving laterally in the network. And thirdly, this is very boring. I mean, I don't know why I even added this. This is so lame. Malware. All the incidents included at least single malware. Most of them had more than one, but for example, the last one which I showed, the SFTP thing, it only pretty much had one malware. Or well, if we tell you that, or think that the same malware is different on ESXi or Linux host and Windows host. So if we take that in account, then I guess there was actually 2. So how you would protect identity? MFA. I'm very late to the party here. I mean, everyone has implemented MFA, right? Yeah. No. All these 3 cases have happened in recent history. Let's put it in that way. So there's still MFA missing. There's domain admin level privileges which can log in remotely and don't have MFA enabled. Of course, I'm sure that Niklas Sarokari later today will tell us why MFA isn't perfect. but still it's better than nothing. User training against phishing. So we weren't really sure how the accounts were compromised in this case, but it's quite likely that at least some of them were compromised by phishing. So user training, I guess, is the best way to battle that. There are technical means, I know, but no one has yet shown me the silver bullet for protecting for phishing attacks. And lastly, principle of least privilege. Yeah. No need to have domain admin level privileges on an account which cannot log in remotely. And this is often forgotten. A single user account should only have as much privilege as needed. Office user, please don't have them have local admin permissions. That's a bad idea. Let's move on to the lateral movement part. So, I'm no expert in Active Directory tier model, so sorry. But it's sort of trying to limit access between of the tiers. So you shouldn't have tier 0 accounts on tier 1 and all that, so forth. So basically, on tier 0, you should have your crown jewels, identity servers, domain controllers, and management servers for those too. On tier 1, production servers. So for example, email, if you have Exchange, still move to Office 365 or you are fucked. Yeah, not really, but yeah, you know, there's a lot of vulnerabilities around Exchange these days. Also file servers, and on tier 2, you have your user accounts, you have your laptops, you have everything else that doesn't really fit to tier 0 or tier 1. Then LAPS, local admin password solution, if my memory serves me right. So what this does is it's changing the local admin password on the devices. You can set it with group policy. You can set complex passwords with it. You can also set it so that it actually changes from time to time, which is quite good. Also, when you're managing it centrally, you can see the actual password for particular admin account on Active Directory, which is nice, of course. If you were in HealthSec, I was talking of one incident, and that was actually one good advocate for this. In that particular incident, actually local accounts were used to move laterally. They had same password. They had labs, but that was misconfigured, but let's not go into that. So firewall is the second thing here, or third thing, I guess, at this stage. I haven't seen this done anywhere so far, but hey, I don't really know how our customers, for example, are defended, but let's not talk about that either. So basically, you most likely can block inbound access on workstation level or server level for that matter. Only allow those inbound ports which are actually needed. There are possibilities that you have some sort of a business application which needs to have inbound ports open on laptops or workstations, but that's very rare these days. Then the malware prevention, and this is again very boring. So centrally managed antivirus solution, blah, 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 blah. Whitelisting is more interesting, I guess. So whitelisting is a solution where you are only allowing those applications which you need. Everything else is not allowed to run on the endpoint. This can be very effective. Limiting PowerShell. Again, this is a bit hard to do. If you are going to block PowerShell on your network from all the users, you have those sysadmins who actually need to be able to manage your devices somehow. 24 minutes are up, by the way, my clock tells me that. So they need to be able to actually admin those devices. If you are going to block PowerShell, they might be using something stupid like PSExec, which leaves no logs behind. Oh, no, perfect. So this is sort of a solution which needs a little bit planning. And then attack surface reduction. With attack surface reduction, this is a Microsoft product or capability in a product, let's put it this way. I'm sure there are others, but what attack surface reduction does is it blocks malicious software behavior. So basically you can, for example, block Office applications from spawning other processes. It can be very effective. And then the last point, the most important point of this presentation, a slide which I actually added this morning. This is the DFIR on call. Thank you.